All right, so this is what I want to talk about today, and that's raising your happiness bar. Right, raising your happiness bar. So let me just define what I mean by that. I do believe, and the science sort of backs this up as well, that we have, and this is all metaphorical, but you'll get the idea, almost a bar, a level of happiness, right? That we fluctuate from but return to. So let's just say you're a 6 out of 10 in terms of happiness. And actually what the science shows us that most people are mildly happy, or historically have been. That may change with what's just happening to us, but most people are mildly happy, like a 6 and a bit out of 10. And what happens with that happiness bar essentially is that when we're elated, we pop up to the 9s and the 10s, and then relatively quickly we'll come back down to that bar, that 6, let's just call it 6 for now to make it easy. Equally, when things go wrong and we slip down to 4s and 3s, we'll also come back up to that 6 out of 10, right? So it's almost our happiness level that sort of protects us. It protects us from being like over the toply, ta-da, this is so amazing, and brings us back down to earth. And it also protects us when it goes the other way and the world's a bit dark and everything's going wrong. It drags us back up, right? I became fascinated by this because, you know, when I think about my own story, 10 years ago, when I started to look into this, I was firmly a 5 out of 10, probably a 4 out of 10 most of the time. And for me, that made no sense because I'd been led on this mission, like I'm sure many of you, to believe the conventional thinking that money and success in a traditional format equal happiness, only for me to arrive there 10 years ago and realise that was a lie. That's just not the truth at all, in any way, shape or form. Having reached a place of relative traditional and material success, only to find that my happiness had gone the other way. I was like a 4 or a 5 out of 10. You know, I was incredibly unfit, unhealthy, unmotivated, all of those things. Strained in my relationships, all on this quest to try and get to the pot of gold, basically, that was going to make me, ta-da, 9 out of 10 happy. But luckily, I became really intrigued and interested about all of these things and thought to myself, why is this happening? And that's when I started to do a lot of the study and the research and got into positive psychology, which is basically the science behind well-being or happiness, for want of a better word. Happiness is one of these really big, all-encompassing, slightly misunderstood words, but I'm just going to stick with that today because it just makes it easier to explain what the hell I'm talking about. So anyway, I was a 5 out of 10 in terms of my happiness. I thought, this is interesting. And then I started to speak and look around and meet lots of people who were also stuck in this 5, 6 out of 10 in terms of happiness. But my knee-jerk reaction, like so many people, was to assume that's just the way life is. That's just the way that I'm made up genetically. Do you know what? I didn't get the lucky straw. I must be just a bit down, a bit glass half empty, a bit pessimistic, and that's why I'm like doomed. I tell thee, doomed to a 4 or 5 out of 10. That's just me. That's unlucky. That's not true. Absolutely not true. There is a genetic component to well-being or happiness, but it's just a component. In the same way, there's a genetic component to most types of cancer, but it only actually develops if you create the right conditions for it to develop, such as smoking or not exercising or eating unhealthy food. It's the same around your happiness. There is a genetic component. I'm owning that. I totally accept it. Right? Some people start off life with that happiness bar up at 8. Some people start off with it at a 5. But everyone can move it. And a bit like the way I view it, if someone's incredibly overweight, it's a lot easier in some ways for them to lose quite a lot of weight. But if you're already relatively in good shape, there's less for you to lose, right? And it's almost the inverse in terms of happiness. I think if you're up at an 8, right, there's only a little way you can go. But if you're down in the 4s and the 5s, there's loads of room potentially for improvement that could fundamentally transform your world. Imagine, right, just walk with me on this one. Just imagine that you could move that happiness bar up from a 4 to a 5, or from a 5 to a 7, or from a 7 to an 8. Just imagine how life would feel if your like standard This is what life feels like every day was a 7 or an 8. And you'd go a little bit up and you'd go a little bit down, but you'd end up back at a 7 or an 8. That is huge. It's foundational. And the reason I know that's possible is because I was a 5 and now I'd say I'm an 8, a consistent 8. And that wasn't easy, right? And you see me, if you follow the lives and do all this stuff, right? I am always smiling and I'm always upbeat and I'm always positive because I've done the work. It didn't just happen. I wasn't born necessarily like this, let's say. The genetic components in my life, I think, made me much more lenient towards the pessimistic end of the scale, the 4s and the 5s, whereas all the work that I've done has definitely transformed me into an 8. Right, and what a wonderful place that is to start every day. That is why I can't, genuinely, and I'm not just saying it, I don't put the camera down and then shout at the kids and bemoan the world. I don't, right? If anyone knows me, they know that. I love it. And I'm excited about waking up the following day because there's stuff that I want to do. There's things that I want to learn. I'm on it. I'm looking for the positive things in life. Not that I'm disregarding all the negatives, but I've done all the work and all the training to get to this place. Right? And that's essentially a lot of what I do on these lives, really, is just to try and fast track maybe a bit of your learning or understanding so that you can raise that happiness bar, for want of a better word, for want of a better metaphor, right? Because that's basically what I'm doing all the time. And you have to keep working at it as well. It's not like you can just get it up there, get it up to that 8 and then go, that's it, done. Right, don't get me wrong. It would take a long while for it to come back down because you've obviously done a lot of work to get it there, but you still need to maintain it. That momentum. And that's again why I'm always doing the reading and the learning and the sharing and all these sort of things. And very much when I articulate this stuff and say it out loud, I'm doing it for you guys because I love it, but I am doing it for myself because I know when I articulate this stuff, it helps me sort of solidify that learning and own that learning, which is really important. So for you all listening, I'm sure many of you have reached that place where maybe you feel like you're a 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. You've probably got a rough sort of idea, for want of a better word, whether you're more glass half empty or half full type of a person. And what I'm here to say is that if you're in a position that you don't want to be in or you'd rather not be in, i.e. you seem to be a bit more pessimistic and always look to the negative and you're drawn towards the glass half empty, if you don't want it to be that way, you can change it. This is the big point I'm making. You can change it. You're not doomed by some genetic fluke or whatever it is to be that way. If you would prefer to see the world a bit brighter and have a bit more energy and vibrancy and a smile, you can change it, but you have to do the work. It's the same thing as transforming your body. It's the same thing as transforming your mind. And on that note, transforming your body lends itself to moving that bar higher. Optimizing your sleep lends itself to moving that happiness bar higher. Like I talk about all of this in my book, Let's Do This. Those 6 streams of positivity, ultimately that's what they are as well. They're like happiness streams as well. If you optimize your sleep, if you move your body, if you eat a nutritious diet, if you find connection, if you find quiet time, you will optimize your happiness as well as your productivity and your motivation, right? It's all the simple things that are going to level you up. Then if you get in there and start to do the work on your mind, maybe, all of those physical aspects take you up 1 bar, but maybe when you do the work on your mind, you level up to 2 or 3. Imagine going from a 4 to a 5 to a 6 to a 7 in terms of your baseline happiness. That would be unbelievable, right? Like, who would love that? And again, that is what I feel like I've been on for 10 years to get to that place. And I love it, right? And I like it in here. And with the world going a bit pear-shaped around me, I can maintain it because, again, I've done the work. So naturally, I look for the positive, the green shoots, without even trying to. It just happens. Whereas 10 years ago, it was the total opposite. It was the 180 opposite. I'd look for all the doom, all the gloom. It'd be like, oh, just my luck. Coronavirus. As if it was sent just directly for me to upset my world. That type of mentality where now it's complete opposite because the work was done. That's the point, right, of all of this stuff. So, a couple of practical things that you can do to level up that happiness bar. As I mentioned, the 6 streams are really important. I talk about them a lot in the book. Those basics, right? Move your body, eat well, quiet time, a break from alcohol was the one that I forgot. I totally believe in that. I think drinking alcohol, I know people may have a different view of this, but I sort of believe I'm right. It's the worst thing you can do for your happiness. And I know that runs contrary to what people feel about alcohol, but it's the worst thing you can do. It just is. Trust me. But anyway, that's another story. I'll get onto that another day. Do the basics and then level up your positivity, right? Here's ways you can do it. This stuff is so powerful, and I know you've all come across this stuff, and I just want to reaffirm it to you why it's so important. Gratitude, so important. You know, it's been in every glossy magazine. It appears in almost every book. 3 things to be grateful for. Like, write them down. Think about them. We call them the 3 Gs in this house. So I'll often ask my girls, like, what are your 3 Gs before bed? And deliberately so, because I want to send them to bed on a positive note rather than on a negative note. But gratitude is a power positive emotion that just levels up your happiness. And the reason it does that is because we have an inherent bias towards the negative, right? And rightly so, because being more fearful and wary of any perceived threat had to be more powerful than the attraction of an easy meal, for example. When we roamed the savannas, if we just saw, a fig tree, and we went, hey, ship it in, the figs, and we weren't actually wary of our surroundings and more fearful, and we ran out, collected the figs, and then got gobbled up by a saber-tooth, our lineage of genetics wouldn't have lasted very long. Therefore, the humans that survived longer were the ones that were more fearful and wary of a threat, because if they sensed it, even though that lovely fig tree was calling them, they'd back out, right? Because there was danger there. Maybe it was dark, maybe there was a rustle in the bushes, whatever. You get the idea. So we're biased that way. So what gratitude does, it unwinds that bias. It starts to get us looking on the positive, the things that we're grateful for. So it starts to drag us maybe towards neutral or maybe into positive. And even in that alone is very often enough to start to level up that bar of happiness. Maybe a point, maybe half a point. It's magic, right? And when you're in that place, keep doing more work. Read more, expand your mind more, move your body more, eat a better diet, optimize your sleep, do all these things, and all of a sudden, up it goes. I mean, just how wonderful is that? Right, and again, I say it as someone who's been through it, has gone from a 5 to an 8. Like, I've forced it up there, and I'm keeping it up there. So anyway, a top tip, there's loads of different little ideas and concepts around it, but just, it's the gratitude thing. For me, it's the one, and the reason they come back to that so often is because there's a ton of science behind it. A ton of science to support that really simple act of 3 things you're grateful for, whether it's daily or sporadically. Sometimes sporadically, the science seems to show is better than making it like a forced practice, can really start to just shape the way that you look at the world. And in doing so, level up your happiness bar. Cool.